We're back for another Gender in Focus episode today, and we're talking all about the phrase born in the wrong body. A lot of people come to the understanding of trans experiences through this phrase, and it is usually pretty well-meaning, and it's a genuine attempt, I think, to understand a very complex topic for those people who are unfamiliar with it. But for many trans and non-binary people, this framing doesn't really reflect their realities even remotely. So that's what we're chatting about today. I am here, as always, with Kai Scott. Hello, Kai.
Hello. I'm really excited to talk about this topic. There's a lot of misunderstanding about it. And how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing so well. How are you doing? I realized that I just say hi and don't ask you anything about how your day is going.
You can see on my face
yes,
that all is well-ish.
All is well-ish.
Well, I mean,
would you like this to turn into a therapy session?
No.
Let's talk about how you feel today.
Yes. It's more like acknowledging the world outside is
right.
a bit of a hellscape right now. So
right.
That's the ish.
If you don't laugh, you'll cry. Well, I'm glad that you're okay-ish. I'm also okay-ish. I suppose we should talk about being born in the wrong body then.
Yeah, let's do it.
This phrase is so commonly used. I think we've all probably heard it a million times, but it does piss some trans people off. No?
To put it lightly.
Why is that? Why does it annoy so many trans people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot to it. So born in the wrong body, as you mentioned in the intro, is people who don't have that experience trying to get at it some way, right? Mm-hmm. And people recognize, for some, their body may not feel exactly right. And so they've kind of bundled that up in born in the wrong body. It maybe rolls off the tongue easily, but for many trans and non-binary folks, it does not feel anywhere close to their experience, and in fact can feel a bit insulting too. And again, not because somebody intended to insult or hurt or upset anyone. It's more that maybe they didn't quite know all that was going on. So why is it difficult for some trans and non-binary folks is because a lot of us feel like we have the right body. Like, I love my body. It's freaking amazing. I lug it up mountains and it's, for the most part coming along. I can see things, I can experience things, I can hug people, like on and on. Like, there's so much that I appreciate about my body, as do other trans and non-binary folks. It's a miracle. Like, anybody, I'm like, well, what the heck?
Right.
And so to reduce some aspects of it to the whole problem of the whole body is wild, right?
Right.
And
yeah.
For some people, it's that is an important those are important aspects, but they're things that people can do something about or manage or, figure something out, right? So to feel more comfortable. So that's where we don't want to throw the whole thing out. It's just adjustments that need to be made for some people. Others are perfectly comfortable in the body that they have, and they don't need to do any adjustments. So for them, it's especially awful because they're like, no, I'm actually in the right body, all of it. So yeah, those are some of the dynamics at play.
So, and I know you did just touch on it, but kind of want to expand that a little bit further as to why is that then so commonly used to explain the experiences of trans people, especially from cis people. It's I've not to say that there are never trans people that align with that or don't align with that that phrasing, but I've never experienced a trans person go, yep, that phrase feels good. That feels right. And so given that it is so rarely accepted as somebody's experience, why is it so commonly used to explain the trans experience?
Ooh, Yeah, there's so much there. And you're
Mm.
right. I've perhaps heard one person out of perhaps thousands of trans and non-binary folks I've interacted with or read
Hmm.
comments about describing their own experience. So that's a really low percentage, and that should tell
Hmm.
us something about, for most people, it's not an accurate statement. I think it gets reproduced in so many different pockets. I think particularly media, this is a favorite go-to, right? Any newspaper article or social media post that's not from trans people, uh, TV shows and movies, and you can go on and on. That is a really common replay. So sometimes people who are not a part of the community are like, "Oh, that's how you describe it," because
Right.
this show or newspaper article said as much. And so I'll just reproduce it and don't kind of check in or perhaps listen to how people describe themselves as a more accurate reflection or words they're using. And so it just gets reproduced because of just absorbing what's heard without questioning or double checking whether that is a good way to describe it. um, I think it's also just easier for people to digest. It's like easier. It's like, oh yeah, born in the wrong body. So of course you want to do something about it, you know?
Right. Yeah.
I think it's just because it is difficult for many cisgender people to understand trans and
Mm.
non-binary experiences. So sometimes when something's difficult, you like grab onto the easiest seeming thing and
Right.
really hunker in there.
Right.
and
Yeah. Yeah. It's difficult
yeah,
to move on from something that you've, I guess, if that's your sort of access point to understanding trans people's experiences, it's really hard to kind of shift that if you're really
mhm,
unsure.
yeah.
So I get it.
It's like a little iceberg in a rough sea, and you're like, I'm
Right.
just gonna stay here and hold on to this. I don't understand anything else, so if I'm gonna move to something else, I don't even know what that would be.
Hmm.
And um, for many, I think it helps to like explain many of the trans experiences they've heard, but unfortunately, it just doesn't capture most people's experiences. I
Hmm.
would say, particularly those who don't choose to do medical transition,
Right.
because there's nothing wrong with the body. You're not undertaking anything, right?
Hmm.
So it's complex.
Sure. I do want to look a little closer, not to get microscopic about this, but
Yeah.
I do want to look a little closer at the language being used because when we're saying something is the wrong body, that would sort of suggest that there is then a right body. And
Hmm.
that is usually about aligning with what society slash cis people think the goal is, which is to be passing as whichever gender that you are. And that is not what many trans people are especially interested in. So I
Ooh.
was wondering if you could go into that and like, yeah, what is the right body, Kai? If you're born in the wrong
Oh
body.
dear. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's so good to look at it more closely, almost like frame by frame, to be like, okay,
Mm,
okay, wrong, but then what's the counterpoint, right? Who's
mm,
determining why for what? Like you can go really deep with this. Just this
mm.
one simple phrase, there's a lot packed into it. It seems quite simple
Yeah.
on the surface. You dig a little deeper and you're like, holy smokes, we're
Hmm.
saying that cis bodies are the right bodies.
Right.
Says who?
Right.
We could even dig a little bit further, to look at, uh, oftentimes it's able-bodied and white and
Right. Yeah.
slim and all of these things. So it really kind of bakes in all these things that are really not authentic to many people, whether they're trans
Hmm.
or cis,
Hmm.
and really difficult to achieve at that
Right.
if it does feel authentic, right? So
Hmm.
it's a really tricky one. And I would say a lot of trans people, much to the surprise of cisgender people, are not trying to achieve the societal expectations.
Right.
That is not their authentic need or aim or anything. And that's why the wrong body language is so difficult and for some problematic, because it's pointing at this invisible default or goal that we're supposedly trying to achieve. And it's like, no, you didn't
Mhm.
kind of bother to want to know what it means for me to be me, you know?
Mhm.
And, so there's kind of these dynamics that come to play with regard to how people talk about this. And again, it's not that people were intending harm or difficulty. They just hadn't had a chance to look at it a little bit closer, like we're doing right now, to understand why it's can be aggravating.
Right. You said something. We recorded another episode a bit ago, and in that episode that hasn't come out yet, or maybe it has by the time people are listening to this, um, you said something really great, which was about how you're not trying to be another gender, a different gender to the one that you are. You're just trying to be authentic to yourself. And so the
Mhm.
goal isn't to change gender. It's not to be one thing and now I'm going to do everything I can to look like the other gender that I feel like I want to be.
Mm.
It's that
Mhm.
this is how I am and I'm going to choose the bits that align with me. And it's the goal isn't to look a certain way. It's not anything to do with looks. That might be a part of it, but it's born in the wrong body. It is so not reflective of
Mm.
anything.
Totally. Yeah. It's like kind of what trans people's objectives and aims are versus what cisgender people think, and
Mm,
it very much is about authenticity and alignment and being true to oneself in ways that may sometimes look how we expect in society and in other instances not,
mm-hmm.
and it will vary based on the individual, and
Right.
and that can be for some cis people a bit disconcerting. We sometimes in our society really like neat little packages that conform
Right.
and
Yeah.
don't move around,
Mm,
um, but I don't think that's reflective of anyone in society. Even cisgender people vary quite a
no.
bit, and so and we would never say they're born in the wrong body, but
Right.
somehow we're okay with having trans people kind of talked about in that type of way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really interesting to kind of take a closer look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. If the goal isn't to be the way the society expects, the goal is to be yourself.
Yeah.
Then there's no such thing as being born in the wrong body in that case for
Hmm.
most people.
Yeah.
What would you say then is a more accurate way of understanding trans experiences that feels a bit more grounded in self attunement or alignment rather than a mismatch of gender
Mm.
and body?
Right. Or changing things and
Yeah.
changing personalities and all this fun
Right.
stuff. Right. And being a completely different person.
Mm,
Yeah. People are the people they are. They discover more or better along the way,
mm,
and then take steps to adjust or attune or to align to who they are. Um,
mm,
and that sometimes takes really short amount of time for people, or some people take long, right? It's a lot to unpack to figure it out and to figure out language to describe it to others. And
mm,
thankfully, in society, we've got better language. More will come to refine that. But I think alignment, attunement, adjustment, it's not saying that nothing changes, right? I mean, maybe for some that's the case, but for those who choose medical, social, legal transition, things do change. But it's just the
mhm,
orientation of that change. Um, are we changing into something different? No, we're the thing already, and whatever that may be in terms of gender identity, and then we're figuring out how to more fully be that or to align to that, but it is based on a personal experience of that. It's that internal thing that then gets externalized in a
mhm.
particular way, unique to that individual. So
Right.
that's more of what I would use. Of course, I would also want to listen to how an individual that I know in my life talks about it too.
Mhm.
If they say born in the wrong body, totally fine for you to use that for them, right? It's not like we're
Right.
saying never to use this. But as a general description, I would veer
Mhm.
clear of it and I would go to these more general, more descriptive terms that are about adjustment, alignment, and kind of fulfillment could be another way of describing it. So
Right.
until you get that person's specific way of talking about it, and then you can adjust further. So it does
Mm.
require a little bit more listening to better understand, right? But
Hmm.
it is really powerful when we absorb how somebody is describing themselves and reflecting that back. That is very healing for
Right.
many to hear that if people are willing to make the effort.
Hmm.
And it's not that much extra to just pay attention to what
Hmm.
people are doing and then give that back.
Sure. I do want to like briefly go back to what we were just saying about how it's generally not, but there are a few people who do align with that phrasing.
Mhm.
And you just said about listening to how people respond. And so with that, there's also the piece of not correcting trans people when
Yes, absolutely. A good point. Because sometimes people might listen to a podcast like this and then be like, they said not to use that, or, like understandably
yes,
hear the difficulties that a lot of people experience with it and then be like, okay, we are shutting this down forever. Never shall we hear, listen, or, come across this term
utter that
again.
phrase.
Yeah, exactly. Fair enough.
Hmm.
We have spoken very strongly against it, but I really caution and advise folks, if somebody trans or non binary has used that for themselves, and that's the way that they want to describe it, that is their prerogative. And it's
Hmm.
valid. And, I'm not going to then preach or like talk to this person and be like, you shouldn't, right? Because that's also
Hmm.
harmful. So just letting it be and just making sure you're not using that more generally for a whole population of people.
Right.
But for that individual to hear them say it, totally fine. If you also want to
Hmm.
use it in reference to them, perfectly valid, right? So, but we definitely don't want to, because we have heard situations where people have corrected trans folks in this regard, and
Right.
that can be also hurtful,
Right.
because
Especially if it
that's
is their
how.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah,
That is actually what their experience is like.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's simple. And similar things, sometimes some cis people have a particular reaction to say something like dead name. It's hard for them
Mm.
to understand what is going on, and so they will tell trans people not to use that word. It's like, let's not.
No, 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 no.
Let's let them describe their own experiences. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fair. You did touch on this, but I would love it if you would go into it a little bit further about how
Mm.
the phrase being born in the wrong body is sort of honing in on medical transition and gender affirming care being the way to transition.
Mm.
If you're trans, you're born in the wrong body, and then you're going to take medical steps in order to not be in the wrong body anymore, which is
Yeah, be
not
in
the
the right
experience
body.
of, yeah, it's not the experience of a lot of trans people. So,
Mm. Yeah, it's so important. It bears repeating that medical transition is not the end all be all. It's not the
mhm,
pinnacle. It's not the real transition, because it can
mhm,
be often used to pit it against, say, a social transition or a legal
mhm,
transition, as being less real or not as serious or whatever,
right.
misconceived notions. And it is a really difficult thing because, as you mentioned, not every trans or non binary person pursues medical transition. That could be because they don't need it. That could be they want it but can't afford it. It could
Mhm,
be that they're on a wait list and it's really, difficult. There's a whole number of reasons that, yeah, medical transition is not the end all be all. In fact, from a survey of 27,000 trans people, we know that about 25% pursue the most popular procedures. It's
really?
low.
Right.
Yeah, I think sometimes people are surprised. There are similar
Mm,
stats here in Canada. with Transpulse Canada, they surveyed folks. Um, so yeah, so 75% don't pursue some aspect of medical transition. A lot of folks focus on hormone replacement therapy. So I think it's really important to not have that be the assumption. And you certainly don't need to have to undertake a medical transition to be trans. You're just
Right.
trans if your gender identity is different than your sex. That's it.
Hmm. Right. Yes.
Everything else is people's own adventure. Yeah.
Right. That's fair. Um, yeah. And also, then with that, if 75% are not accessing the most, what phrase did you use?
Most popular procedures.
Most popular.
If it's on the trans feminine side, the most popular is breast implants.
Hmm.
Most popular procedure on the trans masculine side is a top surgery or a mastectomy, right?
Right.
So,
Sure.
so
So,
those.
right, if the vast majority uh, are not accessing that care, then the idea, hopefully, it's a little clearer as to why being born in the wrong body, explaining it in that way is a bit insulting to a lot of people,
True.
because the majority of people are in the body that they're in and
Yeah.
are not changing it in the way that, like, it's whether they want to or for various other reasons. So this phrase is pretty insulting,
Yeah.
or can be to a lot of people.
Yeah. Especially given the numbers. You're right. The scale drives that home even further
Mm-hmm.
because that's the most popular procedures. There's lower surgeries that are at a much lower rate, right? So, yeah, it just
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot there. So
For
best to
sure.
steer clear.
Yeah, let's not do that. So I also want to talk about bodily autonomy, uh,
Mm,
to some extent. So the way that we have these societal expectations around bodies, especially the shape of someone's body,
mm,
um, means that people will interpret trans experiences in a certain way. And I want to sort of go into that and why bodily autonomy, especially when it doesn't follow
mm,
expected norms, can feel quite hard or disorienting for others to understand, especially from the sort of cis perspectives.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, oftentimes, especially some cisgender folks, they're thinking about it from their vantage point.
Mm,
And that vantage point is not really wanting to change anything or not very much about their body. And
mm,
so for somebody to not just change their body, but then not want to change it to societal expectations, like that's two steps further
mm-hmm.
than they would ever dare go, you know?
Right.
So
Yes. Yeah.
it can feel like almost frightening and
Mm-hmm.
frightening in the way of like concern for that person, frightening um, because, they could appreciate what they're up against. But unfortunately, some cisgender people misdirect that fear that they feel towards the trans person wanting to change them rather than like,
Mm,
okay, what can we do to make a society that is more accepting of bodily autonomy that wouldn't just be beneficial to trans and non-binary folks, it would be beneficial to cisgender folks who might also want to change their body, but because of challenges or restrictions or
mm-hmm.
not wanting to rock the boat, they don't, right? And so it's just in my mind at least, a misapplied energy
Mm-hmm.
to further restricting somebody who is quite confident in what they need and want,
Mm-hmm.
but are now having to struggle to get to that, if at all, sometimes. And how we could all benefit from having bodily autonomy being an important principle in our society. So,
Right.
but does create a lot of fear.
Yeah, and it doesn't. This is such a not trans issue. Obviously,
Mm,
trans people are scrutinized more heavily, but this extends so much beyond that. And I think maybe just sort of to give examples, because I think this is a bit hard, maybe for some people to know what we're talking
mm,
about. I have a very good friend of mine has very thick arm hair,
mm,
lots
mhm,
and lots of gorgeous arm hair that she doesn't want to get rid of,
yep,
and that is she will never get rid of it, and there's a lot of pressure for her to be more feminine, in quotes,
Mm-hmm.
to get rid of that arm hair. And it's like, that's that's going against the grain, but it's her choice, it's her body, and she doesn't want to. And
Yeah.
so that it has created a lot of pressure for her in her life. And she has like waxed at some point and
Mm,
didn't like it and didn't want to, and now doesn't, as an adult, doesn't want to. Like when she was a teenager, she did.
right.
And that is like just an example that popped into my head. I hope
Yeah.
she's okay with me using that. I'm sure she is.
Such a good example, though. Like,
Mm-hmm.
where, you know, people may not realize just how much pressure is applied to, small deviations and then bigger deviations, right? Along a
Mm-hmm.
spectrum of not deviant, but deviation, like difference from the norm.
Yes.
And so it's just so tragic that any amount of time is spent on that, because if
Mm-hmm.
somebody likes that aspect of themselves, or even maybe is neutral on the matter,
Mm-hmm.
like, just let them be. Um,
Right. Yeah.
and I find it really so sad, really,
Mm-hmm.
that we have these societal pressures. I can relate to the arm hair one because growing up, I had that pressure. I
Oh,
was called all
really?
kinds of names in school. And I'm just remembering this now with your
Right. Yeah. Sorry
example.
for triggering you.
No, no, it's like so palpable though. It's so
Mm-hmm.
like seemingly small, but people blow it out of proportion. And, like, it's wild. And then to the lengths that people will go to try to adjust, but then
Mm-hmm.
it feeling inauthentic. And
Right.
it's just like puts people in such unnecessary binds.
Mm-hmm.
When if we had more acceptance in our society, or a little bit more relaxed notions of who's doing what and where and when and why, it would be a
Mm-hmm.
lot easier, and people, wouldn't feel the need to change, right? If
Right.
that
Yeah.
didn't feel authentic to themselves. So yeah. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so
And I
puzzling.
think it's pretty wild that we have that pressure. We put that pressure on people. And
Mm,
there is also then, when it comes to trans people, there is so much pressure anyway. They're feeling their own pressure around this. But then there's also this pressure of, okay, if you are a trans man, you must now meet
mm,
all these expectations of what that means to be a man. And if not, then you're not a real man. And it's
yeah.
like, can you just let people be? There is this, like, I think there's a lot of scrutinization, especially trans women.
Mm.
They go through so, it's like a microscope to trans women. If
Ugh.
you're performing femininity in this exact way, or it's not, it doesn't count. It's wild. And for some people, they really really don't want to. I have a friend
Mm.
who definitely won't mind me sharing this, who doesn't want to get breast implants. She's a trans woman. She loves her chest, absolutely loves it the way she is. She
Mm.
loves to wear dresses, she loves to wear the outfits that she wears, she loves to have a flat chest. She's still a woman. But we
Mm-hmm.
expect women to have a certain body shape. And
Yep.
therefore, because she doesn't perform that, her femininity or her womanhood is called into question all the time. And it's like, why?
Mm.
Why does she have to
Mm-hmm.
change this to fit your idea of what it means to be a woman? And are we
Yeah.
not more than our bodies?
Well, I mean, that's where it really, hits the bedrock of the
Mm-hmm.
whole phenomenon, is like, are we our bodies, or are we who we are, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think many cis people have wrapped up their identity with their bodies, that when they like anchor away from that, it can be really disconcerting. And
Mm-hmm.
but then there is a lot more freedom on that side of, just being and
Right.
figuring out what is most suitable, right? And that can
Mm-hmm.
vary so widely, whether it's on the cis side of things or trans side. And
Mm-hmm.
then we're not kind of constantly monitoring people, because like that does have an impact on trans people and non-binary folks, especially. I totally agree, trans women or trans femme folk get it way more,
Mm-hmm.
because hashtag misogyny, like, on
Yeah.
fire.
Right.
But it's total waste of time for the person monitoring. Like,
Right. Yeah.
imagine how much more time and energy one would have if one wasn't monitoring and providing feedback, unsolicited
Right.
feedback. Like,
Right.
I don't know. I think there's benefit to kind of letting that go, and
Right.
I don't know, starting a company. No, just kidding.
Literally, though, you probably could with all
I
that
mean,
time you have back.
at the very least, some hobbies.
Right. But it's also like saying it as if it's the first time. Sorry, I feel like I'm about to head onto a rant here, but I'll
Oh,
try
please
and
do.
rein it back. But it's this idea that like they don't know what society expects. So like I'm just letting you know that you should
Mm.
get breast implants. Like, well, thank you. I live in the world. I see the world. I see the expectations. You don't need to remind me. I'm
Big
good,
time.
actually. Yeah.
And getting it from a few different sources. And when I
Yeah.
say a few, I mean so many.
Continuously. Yeah. It's
It's
just
like,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
And everybody thinks that they're the first or the
Right.
only one. Yeah. Like, no, 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 honey.
So to close up then, Kai, if
Mm.
someone is trying to understand trans experiences for the first time
Mm-hmm.
and maybe they've come across this phrase, what might be a more helpful starting point than born in the wrong
Mm-hmm.
body?
Yeah. I think we were talking about kind of listening to how people describe their experience and then
Mm.
reflecting that back. Um, and if you don't know the language, then doing more descriptive words can be easier and kind of safer, right?
Mm.
Um, alignment, attunement, adjustment, if there's something changing. Yeah, I think descriptive words in general are more helpful than these kind of phrases of,
Mm-hmm.
especially with laden with judgment. So avoiding anything
Right.
with judgment, right, wrong, off. I mean, I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to remember all the different ways that people describe those can not necessarily resonate for folks, and also who's determining what's right and wrong, and it gets
Mm-hmm.
tricky. So just, yeah, uh, and then if in doubt, it's helpful to listen to stories on the internet of trans people, and then you get the kind of beautiful variety of ways that people talk about their experiences, and
Mm-hmm.
then that gives you a little bit more to work with that's coming directly from community members rather than some media reproduced phrase that doesn't
Right.
quite land for most people.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so
Mm-hmm.
much again, Kai.
Great to discuss and unpack.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And we'll see you next week.
Okay, bye for now.